What's up, dudes? My name is Nick. Welcome back for another one of my Sunday discussion videos, a weekly series where I talk about something relating to K-pop, but that is not specifically about sharing my thoughts on the music that I am listening to. So today we're talking about the question, basically, of should idols get paid? And it's really kind of broad and generic sort of question, which kind of I think covers a couple different areas in where, you know, K-pop idols would work and they have involvement. And this was inspired really kind of by a question that someone posed to me both on Twitter and in the YouTube comments of my news video where I talked about how contestants for both Mix 9 and the unit potentially are not going to get paid, or they haven't gotten paid yet due to, you know, potentially some shady business and, you know, some people who didn't read their contracts closely and, you know, all, like whatever. Ultimately, the reasons for that don't matter and it's not really relevant here, but just the basic idea is that the idol contestants on that show on those shows are not exactly getting paid for what they're doing there. And you know, is that the question that was asked to me is like, should they get paid, pretty much? And, you know, that's an interesting kind of question. And I'm going to kind of expand that out from should they get paid for participating on variety shows to should they just get paid in general for being in a group and, you know, working on and being a trainee and working, making music and doing all that stuff, like all that kind of stuff. So we're going to go through it, and we're also going to kind of answer that question as to whether or not they should get paid to be on that show, to be on like variety shows or elimination shows or something like that, coming up at some point during the video as well. Probably to finish it off because I didn't actually write it down on my outline. So first off, just the general, you know, kind of question is idols in a group, should they get paid for what they do? And for me, what I would kind of say is like kind of two questions that I think need to be answered before, or that I can answer that will then kind of give a really clear sort of idea of what I think. So the first one is basically, what are their living expenses and how are they being covered, basically? So it's pretty frequent. It happens pretty frequently where idols in groups, whether they're, you know, like top trainees in a company or they've just debuted in a group, they live in company dorms, they pay for their housing, they potentially get a little bit of an allowance too, or an allowance from the company to, you know, buy other things. You know, the company pays a lot of their living expenses, and you know, that's a really good deal, and that is something that you don't necessarily see in a majority of music industries all over the world. And you know, as far as, you know, from the pure making music aspect of it, like that's a really good deal for them. Like if you compare to someone who wants to start a band in the United States, they don't necessarily get paid housing, and they don't get, you know, 1 or 2 meals a day paid for, if that even is a thing for K-pop idols. You know, they don't get that. So, you know, like a band that starts in my local city, they have to work a full-time job or even a part-time job, depending on how frequently they can, you know, get shows and perform. And so, you know, the rookie idols don't have the expenses that a, you know, rookie band, like a Korean indie band, would have. So they don't have to, you know, kind of balance like work to pay their bills and then also working on the music so that they can build that up to actually make that into a career. All they have to focus on, really, because, you know, they don't have to work a job, is training and getting better at all of the different aspects of what they need to do to make better music, get better, just become a more valuable, you know, valuable idol. And so I kind of, as a result of that, because of the fact that the company sinks in a pretty decent amount of resources, you know, into putting those idols in a position where they don't have to worry about anything else. There isn't necessarily an outside stress as to, you know, making ends meet and paying their bills, so they can just focus on music and becoming a valuable asset to the company as quickly as possible. In that situation, I don't necessarily think that a massive amount of payment is due. I mean, they also, like I said, they also do regularly get a little bit of an allowance too, from what we've heard. So they do get paid to a certain extent, but they're also, of course, not making ridiculous amounts of money, which I think is pretty fair considering the way the progression that music, as a musician, you have to go through if you're going to build yourself up, and you're not going to be, instantly made into a super popular person like, manufactured pop stars in the United States and of course Korea as well, because that's basically what all of these people are. So they don't have to do that. They still aren't, of course, living in great conditions, but, your favorite rock band from your local city also isn't living in great conditions. They're driving a, rusted out van. They're getting paid $600 per gig that they're, dividing between 4 people. Like I knew a guy that I worked with at a couple of years ago who was in a metal band in Louisville, back when he was younger. And because there wasn't really a metal scene in Louisville, they'd have to travel up to a couple hundred miles up north to like Cincinnati, or a couple hundred miles west to Indianapolis to play shows. And there were 4 or 5 of them, I believe it was. And they get paid like $600 for a show, and they'd split that between everybody after, of course, they paid for their costs to get there, and food and whatever other stuff that they had to pay to get up there. So ultimately they weren't making like any money, which, comparatively speaking, an idol living in a dorm that's potentially not the greatest quality and all that stuff, and living in conditions that don't exactly match up with the glitz and glam that you see on screen or on stage, stuff like that, as what the company puts forward as the image of the group. That's pretty much the way that it is for anybody who's just starting out in music. So it's not really a super atrocious thing. The second question, the second kind of question that I would ask, which then would lead to an answer that kind of indicates whether or not idols should get paid, which is a little bit of like, how valuable are the idols and the group to the company, which means like, how is the group generating profit for the company? And I think that at this point, when the group is generating profits for the company, then they absolutely should get paid, because instead of previously, when they first debuted, the idols actually being the one who are getting the favorable deal from the company, because the company is paying expenses and allowing them to focus on becoming the best idols that they possibly can. Now, because the group is profitable, the company is the one who is benefiting and profiting and getting the favorable side of the deal from the idols who are doing all of the work and generating all of the money. So because they are more valuable, they are, you just kind of have to pay them. It's just kind of the way that it goes. The more, valuable something is, the more valuable a company becomes. As an employee, if you show that you are a good worker and you are a good asset to the company and you get things done, then they probably want to pay you a little bit more so that they can keep you, and so that you can just stay happy and, of course, continue to make money and generate profits for them. So that's the point that I think that idols should get paid when it comes to releasing music, which is the way that groups anywhere should get paid when they start releasing music. If you start generating profit, then the company, which is kind of bearing a lot of your costs, is the one who is benefiting now from all of your work, and so you should get compensated for your work. It's like, it goes with like everything, in all honesty, whether you're making YouTube videos and now like me or a lot of other people on YouTube, regardless of genre, don't get paid a whole lot, if anything at all, and we're really just doing this more or less for free, or for a very, very small amount of money, really just so that we can grow and become big, so that at one point in the future, potentially the YouTubers can make a living off of it. Same thing with K-pop idols in a group that just debuted. Same with the rock band from your local city, who's only known within your city. They always start small. They don't make any money. Whoever is the one who's bearing the costs to produce their music and just transport them around and do all this other stuff are the ones who need to kind of be compensated beforehand, because they allowed the idols they enabled them to grow, to become very popular and generate the profits, and so they need to get something back a little bit. And then, of course, at some point, then the idols should get paid for the work that they're doing, because they are having a positive effect on the bottom line of the company. So So that's really ultimately, it. When you're first, it's really basically the same sort of progression that that a normal, like an indie band would go through, except for like when you're starting out, indie bands definitely need to get paid, and they should get paid, even if it's a tiny amount of money. But K-pop idols, when they first start out in a group, they don't necessarily need to get paid, because their living expenses, their travel expenses, all of this other stuff that they would otherwise need to pay for in order to just live and not be homeless, that's taken care of by the company for the most part, and so they don't have those expenses, whereas indie bands do, and so they should get paid a little bit, because it does help them with taking time off from work and doing all this stuff. All of this kind of comes down to a the opportunity cost, I guess you can say, if we're going to put it into economics, is like you can spend your time doing any number of things, but and of course all of those things kind of to a certain extent have a little bit of a monetary value to them. So if you can spend all of your day training to become a really, really good dancer and singer, then that's really, really good. But there's all kinds of other things that kind of it shifts. Like if you spend more time training versus releasing music and promoting and doing all that stuff, it kind of shifts as to what value all of that time is as your career goes on, as your popularity goes up. So it's a bit of a scale. You start out not getting paid, similar to how indie groups in indie rock bands do, where they don't get paid that much. But then as you grow and grow and grow and become more popular and become more of an asset to the venues that are going to be, you're going to be performing at, the company in the case of K-pop that they are signed to, then they get paid more and more and more, because they are worth that money, they're worth that investment. Because opportunity cost, do I pay a little bit more for this group or pay a little bit less for this group who's not, potentially won't draw as much? So then the final kind of aspect of the whole idol thing is like, should trainees get paid, compensated for their time? And I think that's a little bit of a tricky one, because I would assume that most trainees, like 90% of the trainees at the very least, don't spend every single day, every single hour of their life at the company training or doing anything like that. I'm pretty sure that they definitely do it on the side, with the hopes of catching somebody's attention and showing that they have what it takes to potentially be up in the top class of rookies or of trainees to be put together for a group in the future. I don't think that it's like that being a trainee is a full-time gig. If it is, then they should probably get paid, because you're taking up time away from, of course, having a job and doing that stuff. Of course, but that does go back to, as if the expenses, like living expenses, if the company is providing them a place to live and other stuff like that, then payment and compensation for their time isn't necessarily going to be that high. It just is, the way that it is. And I honestly think that it is kind of fair. So, final thing, which is, should idols, regardless of stature, get paid or compensated, or even should the company get compensated for having their idols participate on a TV show, variety show, weekly idol, whatever you want to talk about or whatever you want to use? Should they be compensated for that? And I think that ultimately, of course, that's down onto like onto like an individual sort of basis, where the company is the one that ultimately kind of decides how valuable their idols are and how valuable their time is. So of course, with a lot of groups who are sending idols and sending trainees to the unit and Mix 9 and Produce 101, they're perfectly fine with going and doing that without getting any sort of money in return, because the promotion aspect of that is much more valuable to the company than getting a little bit of money out of it, getting a check. So it really is down to the individual basis. And again, it does go down to the fact that if you're an unpopular group, then your time really honestly isn't worth that much. So while you could be releasing music, you could also be on this TV show promoting yourself, and that is going to have somewhat of an equal cost as far as the opportunity cost. If you're like Super Junior or XO or anybody like that, you could just spend your entire time in the studio cranking out hits, releasing 5 songs, 5 albums a year or something like that, and become rich, and the company could profit greatly off of that. But Or you could go, make an appearance on a variety show for a couple of weeks, and you lost out on a little bit of on potentially a great amount of income. So potentially the company and the idols kind of should get compensated for that, because they are their time, when it comes to top groups, are very, very valuable. So for them to take their time out of their schedule to spend time on your show, they potentially should be, compensated for that. Whether that's just compensation to cover costs of actually being there, or to actually generate a little bit of profit for the time that they're there to record that broadcast, I don't really know. That's not really, anything like that, or anything that I'm really interested in, talking about. And I think that's potentially a completely different topic for a different video. But, that's also a thing too, is like, cover costs or generate a little bit of profit. It kind of depends on, again, how the company values their idols' time, their group's time. So that's really all that I've got kind of covered, and went through everything that I wanted to talk about for this discussion video. So I'm going to end it here. Of course, these videos here, I really want to just kind of put out my thoughts and opinions on it, whether they're, right or wrong, and of course, open it up for some discussion down in the comments below, because I'm interested in hearing what you guys have got to say. This is a topic that comes up very, very frequently, or has in the past, when contract disputes and stuff like that have come out about people see living conditions for idols and all this other sort of stuff. People talk about this and have complained about this pretty frequently over the entire history of K-pop, I'm pretty sure. So it's an interesting topic to talk about, and I'm interested in hearing what you guys think. So share your thoughts down below. If you want to get involved and to help decide the topic for the next Sunday discussion, then head on over to Patreon, show your support over there, because I post a poll for people on Patreon to decide the topic for the next Sunday discussion video, and you will get early access to that on like a Wednesday or Thursday of next week. So you'll get it a couple days early before everyone else. And of course, you'll get to, kind of decide the topic out of the list that I've got. So you don't have to do that though. That's not a requirement, whatever. So that's going to be it for this video. As always, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all next time.